Howdy, and welcome to the podcast. This is Untold Tales from this side of nowhere, and I am excited to announce that this is our 50th episode. It also happens to be the last episode of 2024, which makes this our Christmas special. I'm your host, Connor Jones, and I couldn't be more pleased to be with you on this episode, sharing another story from northwestern Wyoming. So buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Or it could just be, a really nice Christmas story. We'll see what happens. This week, our podcast is sponsored by the Copper Corner Cafe. The Copper Corner Cafe in Basin, Wyoming is open for breakfast and lunch Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. They're operating under their winter hours right now, so just open till 1:30 p.m. Stop by and try any of their delicious menu items, featuring homemade bread for all sandwiches and, of course, their famous pie for dessert. During this holiday season, you can't miss out on some Copper Corner Cafe pie and their delicious cinnamon rolls with the maple glaze. Cannot get enough of those cinnamon rolls. So come on into the Copper Corner Cafe, get yourself something delicious to eat. We're also sponsored by the Wyoming Welcome Program. The folks at the Wyoming Welcome Program distribute brochures and baskets that carry advertisements from Park County businesses. These brochures are placed on restaurant tables in Cody and Powell, and the baskets are distributed to new move-ins to the Park County area. If you're interested in getting your business name out there and doing a little bit of advertising, reach out to them at Haley J, that's HALEYJ, at WyomingWelcome.com. And now, the podcast. It is only 5 days until Christmas, as my kiddos continue to remind me. They are so excited for presents and to go spend some time at their grandparents' house up in Montana. So, Mom and Dad, that's me and my wife Haley, we are doing everything we can to get ready, and we're excited too. Watching kiddos open presents and spending time with family, eating great food, and celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ is always so fun. It's the best time of the year. The most wonderful time of the year, right? So we are a little disappointed because there's no snow on the ground and it has been crazy warm. It's felt more like, September, maybe early October here in the Bighorn Basin. And I don't know if my little kids say enough prayers. Maybe we'll have a white Christmas, but I don't know. It's still pretty dry. Speaking of Christmas, I told you that this was going to be our Christmas special and episode 50. I can't believe it. This is year 2 of the podcast. So after this episode airs, I'll have been making Untold Tales from this side of nowhere for 2 years. It just so happened that we landed on episode 50 at the end of 2024 because of that 3-parter that I did on the Caraway Canyon hike. So it's pretty fitting, and I'm happy to share with you the other Christmas story. This is my Christmas special, and I hope it doesn't disappoint. So here goes. Scoutmaster Eli Lyman was, how do I put it, notorious for his Christmas spirit, perhaps even infamous. In fact, us Boy Scouts of Troop 41 had never seen someone so alive with holiday zeal. How else do you explain his insatiable desire for so many Christmas trees? Eli, why can't we just sell popcorn like the other scout troops? Marty moaned as he dragged Eli's latest find toward the trailer where we were piling the little evergreen trees. What's that? Eli hollered, shutting off his chainsaw and lifting one side of his noise-canceling earmuffs. "Why don't we just sell popcorn?" I said, repeating Marty's question. Eli chuckled. "Popcorn's for sissies. And besides, where's your Christmas spirit? Don't you like Christmas trees?" "I used to," my twin brother Fred muttered, stomping his feet in an attempt to get some feeling back in his toes. "What about cookies?" my cousin Jim asked. "Let's sell Christmas cookies instead." "Girl Scouts already took cookies, Jim," Eli said, "though I do love me some Girl Scout cookies." His voice trailed off, and his eyes misted over. We all nodded in agreement, our minds also filled with visions of chocolate mint cookies and those coconut ones that no one can get enough of. Eli suddenly snapped back to reality. "Well, as much as I have my doubts sometimes, y'all ain't Girl Scouts, and these trees won't cut themselves, so let's get back to work." Eli chuckled in his throat and gave his chainsaw a quick pull. It roared to life, and Eli's Christmas spirit got to work sawing down another tree. We were high in the Bighorn Mountains and had been harvesting Christmas trees all day. Initially, we had been pretty excited about the whole thing. I mean, what experience is more quintessentially Christmas than cutting Christmas trees? The whole ride up to the mountain, we boys sang Christmas songs at the top of our lungs and chugged the half-gallon of chocolate milk Marty bought at the gas station when Eli stopped to gas up his old truck. By the time we had completed the hour drive up the mountain, Eli was so overcome by our Yuletide enthusiasm, he had donned his noise-canceling earmuffs. I'm sure he just wanted to make sure he didn't get caught up in our singing and miss a turn or something. I've missed a turn or two myself while singing in the car. Our initial holiday spirit had since cooled off considerably. Now it was getting dark and the temperature was dropping rapidly. The trailer was piled high with little green trees, and even Eli was starting to get tired of Marty's whining, which had become so persistent, not even the roar of the chainsaw and Eli's noise-canceling earmuffs could block it out. "Our parents are going to wonder where we are, Eli," Marty wailed. "Don't you worry," Eli grumbled, shutting off his chainsaw and pulling his earmuffs off. "Your parents ain't too concerned about you. Trust me. Now, which way do we go to get to the truck? Do one of you have the keys?" By the time we rolled back into Poverty Flats with a towering load of Christmas trees, all of us boys were fast asleep, and Eli had to shake us awake to get out at our respective houses. During the course of the next week, Eli had us out running the Christmas tree stand every day after school. "Come on, Eli, we have homework. We can't stand out here all afternoon," we would complain. An army of Christmas trees stood in tight formation behind us, waiting to be scooped up and carted home to be dressed in Christmas finery. "Cinch up that kerchief," Eli barked. "No one wants to buy a Christmas tree from a Boy Scout who looks like he just rolled out of bed." The crazy Christmas tree magnate surveyed us boys with our Christmas trees for sale, spelled with a number 4, sign, and sighed. "Y'all ain't nearly as cute as the Girl Scouts, but it'll have to do, I guess," he muttered. "Where are you going, Eli?" Marty shouted after our scoutmaster as he walked toward his truck. "Me?" Eli asked. "I'm going to turn on the truck so's I can warm up. It's cold out here." "Well, that's no fair," Marty wailed, his breath fogging the air. Eli's truck door slammed and the engine turned over before roaring to life. "Don't worry, Marty. Just think of all the fun things we're going to do with the money we earn from selling these trees," I said in an attempt to cheer him up. "Yeah," Fred agreed. I bet we can get a new tent to replace the one you burned all the holes in when you set it too close to the fire on that Dorsey Creek campout. Marty shivered and blew on his hands. I don't need to buy a new tent. Santa will bring me a new one. I already asked him. Fred and I raised our eyebrows and exchanged a knowing look. I'm hoping I get a new pellet gun this year, Jim said, excitement gleaming in his eyes. That would be awesome, Fred agreed. We asked for recurve bows. Recurve bows? Marty asked. What are those? Marty, you don't know what a recurve bow is? I asked in disbelief. It's a bow that has a curve in it, so it shoots farther than a regular longbow. Don't you know anything about archery? I know enough, Marty huffed. Fred and I had become major archery enthusiasts ever since spending a week at Camp Buffalo Bill the previous summer. There we spent hours at the archery range getting our archery merit badge. I didn't tell Marty that I had never heard of a recurve bow myself prior to going to scout camp. Why bother with such superfluous details? Yeah, I can't wait, Fred gushed. With a recurve bow, we can shoot so much farther than with our regular bows. I bet we can even go rabbit hunting with recurve bows. Just then, our conversation was interrupted by our first customer. It was Marty's mom. Hi, Mrs. Flincherton, Jim smiled. Would you like to buy a tree? These ones are 7-footers, and the 8-footers are over there. We heard the creak of a truck door as Eli hurried out to make sure we conducted business according to his high standards. Well, look at this, Mrs. Flincherton smiled. You boys look sharp in your uniforms. How much for the 8-footers? I don't see a price. Eli said it depends who's... Howdy, Mrs. Flincherton, Eli crowed. I see you have a fine taste in Christmas trees. Your son worked mighty hard harvesting all of these. How's $25 sound? The rest of the afternoon went pretty well, except that Marty wouldn't quit whining about how cold it was. I wish I had gone home with my mom, Marty moaned. It's so cold. I was starting to wish Marty had gone home with his mom, too. Too bad she's the only one who bought a tree so far, Jim said glumly. Ah, well, there's always tomorrow, Fred said with his usual optimism. By the time Eli climbed out of the truck to help us close up the stand for the night, only the thought of our future scouting adventures sustained us. If the rest of the week was like this, we were going to have some trees left over. A lot of them. It's a scientific fact that time slows down between December 1st and the day school gets out for Christmas break. Ask any kid, and they'll tell you the longest days of the year come during the first 3 weeks of December. Don't buy that stuff about December days being the shortest. School dragged on like cold tar dripping down an ice block wall, and our stints in the Christmas tree stand were only slightly better. To be fair, people did start buying our trees, and the barrel Eli dragged out to contain a small hand-warming fire made working the stand a lot more comfortable. But all I could think about was Christmas Day and the recurve bow I was sure would be waiting under our own Christmas tree. Every day after we got home, we would do our chores, which without fail included hauling firewood in for the wood-burning stove. During the months of November through March, hardly a day went by that Dad didn't light a fire, and that stove had a huge appetite. Between the Christmas trees and the endless loads of firewood Fred and I hauled into the house, we were about as sick of pine trees as any two boys in the history of Wyoming. By the time the third week of December rolled around, at least 2 years had passed since December 1st, and Fred and I would have happily set fire to the entire woodpile and the Christmas tree lot just so we didn't have to haul another log into the fire or sell another Christmas tree. Firewood and Christmas trees were the least of my worries, though. I had searched high and low in the little trailer house where our family of 9 lived, and Fred and I still cannot find any sign of a recurve bow and arrows. We were starting to get nervous. Had all of our youthful capers finally caught up with us? Would our parents come through with our gifts? I had been sure to tell them exactly what we wanted, even going so far as to provide the exact brand name and model of bow, just in case they made a mistake and bought a recurve that didn't live up to my high standards. Christmas was a mere 4 days away, and there wasn't a single box in all the house, not even my parents' closet, which was supposed to be off limits, that resembled a pair of recurve bows and some arrows. As we approached the big day, Fred and I were starting to get nervous. We weren't the only ones who were getting nervous. Scoutmaster Eli Lyman was starting to worry us. On the last day of school before Christmas break, Fred, Jim, and I showed up at the Christmas tree stand after school, bags of Christmas treats in hand and vibrating with the sugar buzz brought on by our middle school Christmas party. The day had been filled with movies and games, what my parents referred to as a waste of a school day. Us boys loved it. Right away, we noticed something was off at the Christmas tree stand. It may have been the way Eli was talking to himself as he sloshed diesel fuel out of a yellow jug over some firewood in the barrel. Or maybe the enormous sign he had painted on an old blue tarp and hung over our Christmas tree stand announcing a huge closeout sale, everything must go, with a Z in closeout, sale, spelled S-A-I-L, and the T missing from must in must go. "Where's their Christmas spirit, huh?" Eli muttered as he screwed the lid back on his diesel jug. "Who wouldn't buy a Christmas tree from some Boy Scouts? Bet they're all using those fake plastic trees. Huh, what a sham." When Eli flicked his match onto the wood, flames shot up, and as he turned to us, the backdrop of fire did nothing to soften his crazed appearance. His eyes had a wild, hunted look in them, and his left eye twitched unpredictably. "Hey, Eli, how's it? Holy cow!" Jim's greeting was abruptly interrupted by his shock at Eli's deteriorating condition. "Eli, are you feeling all right?" Fred asked slowly. "Of course, never better," Eli blustered. "Now where's Marty? Thought he could skip out on the last day of Christmas tree sales? Where is that little Scrooge of a Boy Scout?" Fred and I exchanged a glance. We knew Marty had run to June's store to buy a soda and hide out because he didn't want to, quote, stand around and sell those dumb old Christmas trees on the first day of Christmas break. But we weren't sure how Eli would take the news. "I'm not sure where he went. He was at school today," I shrugged, my eyes flitting toward the store. Eli saw right through me. "The store? Is that where he went? Don't you worry. I'll help him rediscover his Christmas spirit." Eli marched over to June's store, and a few moments later reemerged, a handful of the back of Marty's coat clutched in one hand, and Marty, who was inside the coat, a torrent of words pouring out of him the whole way. "I was just getting a soda. Honest, Eli. I wasn't going to skip out on the stand. I love Christmas trees." Eli deposited Marty gruffly beside Fred, Jim, and I, then turned to look at us with bulging eyes. "Sell 'em all," he growled, then marched to his truck and slammed the door without another word. "He's in a cheerful mood," Marty muttered, adjusting his coat angrily. just abrim with Christmas spirit. Well, hopefully he's got enough Christmas spirit to take 35 Christmas trees home and decorate them, Jim said. For some strange reason, people weren't buying Christmas trees 4 days before Christmas. And in spite of our best efforts, when we finally closed up the stand, a host of evergreens were still huddled together at the back. Bark and pine needles littered the ground, and one corner of Eli's sign had fallen down. When the Christmas tree tycoon finally emerged from his truck and dumped water on our fire, it was with the air of a general admitting defeat on the field of battle. His shoulders slumped, and his steps were heavy. "Come on, boys, let's get you home." As we drove the 10 minutes or so to Poverty Flats from Burlington, we boys tried to cheer Eli up by singing our favorite renditions of popular Christmas carols, but his heart just wasn't in it. After Eli dropped Fred and I off, we watched the taillights of his pickup retreating in the growing darkness, and I said, "Gee, I wonder what Eli's going to do with all those leftover Christmas trees." "I don't know," Fred shrugged. "Let's go have some dinner." As soon as school was out, it was like someone had reminded Father Time to push play again, and the days leading up to Christmas flew by. On the night of Christmas Eve, the entire Jones family got together to celebrate the Savior's birth, with dinner, a reenactment of the Nativity, and, of course, Christmas pajamas from Grandma Jones. That night, Fred and I could hardly sleep. Visions of myself dressed in forest green, a feather stuck in my cap, and a recurve bow in my hand filled my mind's eye. I could feel the weight of the bow in my hand, and envision my fingers knocking an arrow, drawing it back and letting it fly towards my intended target, all in tantalizing detail. Christmas morning couldn't come soon enough. Finally, after at least 3 eternities, the morning came, and with it all my siblings huddled in front of my parents' door, waiting for them to emerge. How anyone could sleep in until 6 a.m. on Christmas morning was beyond me. "Merry Christmas!" we shouted in unison when my parents made their appearance with sleep-blurred eyes and groggy yawns. We at last sat down to open our gifts, and Fred and I eagerly tore the wrapping paper from each one, hoping against hope to reveal the long-awaited recurve bows. The first gift wasn't a bow and arrows, nor the second. In fact, Fred and I unwrapped every one of the gifts addressed to us, and not a single one was a recurve bow and arrow. The trio of trouble somehow made out all right. They always did, in spite of their legendary bad behavior. And the little ones were overjoyed with their gifts. But when everything was unwrapped, Fred and I sat there, looking at the socks we had received in total bewilderment. "Everything all right, boys?" Dad asked, a grin sliding past his facade of mild concern. "Yeah," Fred sighed. "Thank you so much for everything. I love these socks." The lie was so bitter he had to choke it out. For my part, I remained silent with downcast eyes, wondering how things could have possibly turned out this way. Oh well, there was always next year. "You know," Dad said, turning to Mom, "I could have sworn I saw some boot prints around the woodpile this morning. Did you already go get some firewood?" Mom was less talented at hiding her grin. No, I haven't been out there. Do you think Santa was doing firewood?" Fred and I glanced at each other, confused. Who could talk about Saint Nick doing firewood at a time like this? Our aspirations to become world-class archers were in shambles, and Mom and Dad were talking about firewood? Now Dad was grinning too, Boys, I think you ought to go check it out. I was still confused, but the way my parents were grinning had begun to fan the tiny embers of hope I had thought were all but extinguished. Yeah, Mom said. Go take a look. Put on your boots. Fred and I shared another look, then bolted through the sea of wrapping paper to get our snow boots. Why would Santa do firewood? My youngest sister Annie asked. He doesn't, Candace, the eldest, replied. The whole family followed behind Fred and I as we tore out the door and tramped along the well-worn path over to the woodpile. From his spot at the sliding glass door with one panel replaced by a sheet of plywood, Dad called out, "Dig through the pile a bit." Still confused, we began to remove logs from the top of the pile. Carefully, we began setting them down to form a new row at first, but eventually our excitement got the better of us, and we began tearing at the pile with reckless abandon. What could be in this woodpile? Did my parents know that I had been snooping for presents? Would they have been crafty enough to know that my aversion to doing chores would keep this present a secret? After about 3 layers of wood had been removed, the lid of a green plastic tote emerged from the woodpile. My heart, which was already beating quickly, picked up the pace. "What is it?" Mom asked excitedly from the porch, the smile on her face bright enough to warm the cold December morning. There's a tote here!" Fred cried. "Let's get the lid off!" I shouted. Removing another stick of firewood or two, we found the edge of the lid and pried it away. Inside were 2 long packages wrapped in bright paper, nestled beside 2 shorter, rectangular ones. "Ah!" I screamed in delight. Without further prompting, Fred and I scooped the boxes from the tote and unceremoniously tore the wrapping paper from them to reveal, at long last, the recurve bows we had been hoping for. "Thank you, thank you, thank you!" Fred and I screamed, jumping up and down with delight. I thought my heart would explode with joy. Oh, the excitement! Oh, the gratitude and glee! We raced back to the house, our gifts in hand, and threw our arms around Mom and Dad. Mom had to hand the video camera she had been trying to hide to Candace so she could hug us. "Merry Christmas, I love you," Mom said, kissing the top of my head. "I love you too, Mom," I said, burying my face in her side. "Love you guys," Dad smiled, wrapping Fred in a bear hug. My head snapped up, and I looked up at Mom and asked, "Can we shoot them? Can we?" Dad broke into a hearty laugh. "Let's have breakfast first." A day or 2 later, Fred and I were outside searching around our target for yet another arrow that had inexplicably disappeared when Eli's truck pulled up to the trailer house. Glancing up from the ground, I watched as Eli clambered from the truck and headed to the front door. "Wonder what Eli's doing here," Fred said to me. "Yeah, I don't know," I muttered, a little more invested in the search, since it was my arrow that had gone missing. "Let's go find out. We can find your arrow in a bit." We trudged through the snow up to the house, to where Mom was conversing with Eli at the front door. "Hey, Eli," I called. The wiry scoutmaster turned toward us and grinned. "Merry Christmas, you two. I hear you're quite the archers." "We're working on it," I shrugged. Eli's smile widened. "Hey, I came over here to talk to you two. I don't know if you noticed, but we have quite a few trees left over from the Boy Scout Christmas tree sale, and I was just telling your mom I know just what to do with the leftover trees." I didn't like the sound of this. "What's your plan, Eli?" Fred asked, tapping his bow against his leg. Eli rubbed his hands together, an all too familiar look in his eye. "What do you boys think about helping me cut up those trees so's we can sell firewood?" There you go. The Other Christmas Story. If you enjoy Christmas movies, then you may have recognized a reference in this story title. My favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story, and if you haven't seen that one, you should check it out. But I hope you have enjoyed sharing this Christmas special with me, and I have enjoyed telling this story. And I must give a caveat. Some of my stories may contain an ember or a sliver of truth or be based on actual events. For anyone out there who's thinking, wow, I don't remember any of this, I made this story up from scratch. Okay, so this one is truly an untold tale from this side of nowhere. And please, no one get upset because they don't remember anything in this episode ever happening, because it didn't. I made this one up just for this Christmas special. If you would like to support us here at episode 50, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review and rate the podcast. I'd sure appreciate your support. And if you have a Christmas story or a Christmas memory you'd like to share, be sure to respond to our post when this episode is released on Facebook, or shoot me an email at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com. And I'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas from me and the rest of the Jones family. And as always, this has been another Untold Tale from this side of nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time, folks.